one day we got a phone call from the Law Society saying that the treasurer of the Law Society, then G. Arthur Martin, wanted us in his office at 2 o'clock a certain day to discuss this operation. We were utterly terrified. And they marched us down this long hall with a red carpet. It was all kind of dingy in my memory, until we arrived at the door of the treasurer's office in Osgood Hall. The door creaked open, and inside it was G. Arthur Martin and the man who struck the medal, who was the secretary of the Law Society. We sat down. We were ready for a discussion. G. Arthur Martin showed what for him was extremely high emotion, for those of you who don't know him. He pursed his lips. Explained to us very briefly that the name was unfortunate and inappropriate because people might think we were all lawyers, and he wanted a change, and that this business of having a table on the sidewalk giving legal advice was unbecoming a lawyer, and he wanted that changed as well. My memory says, and Paul's may be different, that we intended to discuss those issues, but in his mind this was not a discussion at all. That was the end of the interview. We kept the name and moved the office inside on Yorkville Avenue. Our law office in those days was very political. It was the Black Panther Party was our client. They'd be up every once in a while visiting. Draft dodgers coming out of our ears because it was the time of the Vietnam War. Hippies everywhere and drug cases. Every demonstrator against the war, Carlton Armstrong, extradition cases. I know that Austin Cooper is here who will remember that case in particular. We had a great time, but it was chaotic. And issues kept popping up that we could not cope with. We did our best. We did our best because then, unlike today, there was no one else. And it was fun. When Trudeau declared the War Measures Act and essentially put martial law in force in Canada, Paul and I talked about what to do, and we decided that this was wrong and that Rome was saluting the flag a bit too much, and in a time of fear we were going to organize a demonstration at City Hall Square. And we did. We called the demonstration, we sent out all the flyers. There were 30 people who showed up. And more than half of them were mounted. People we'd never seen before. And I brought this to your attention, not just out of sentiment, but because it's a reminder that in your speech that you're about to hear from Paul Copeland, it would be unwise to expect either deference to authority or reticence.
Use the public persona of Paul Copeland. My guess is it goes something like this. He rides a motorcycle. He's an unabashed and unrepentant leftist. Despite his politics, he somehow got elected a venture 1,000 years ago and has hung on ever since. He's a nice guy, most people like him. He's obsessed with issues of national security and police accountability. He's never met a camera or a microphone that he doesn't gravitate to. And he never seems to age. How did it? Those of you who know Paul personally will know exactly what I'm about to say about debunking the myth. There simply is no myth. Paul, the public Paul, is exactly who the private Paul is each and every minute of the day. This is a man without a facade, even when one is truly called for. He has a boyish exuberance for life, the social life of an extroverted 20-something, and he's the proverbial dog with a bone when he gets hold of an issue or a cause. He is a nice guy. He still rides a bike. He rides a bike on days that are so cold that most of us are at the walk to our car. What I can say that some of you might not know is this. Paul is absolutely tireless, in part because he has a serious sleep disorder and thus has far more time on his hands than the average human being. But largely because he's also thoroughly, totally, and absolutely engaged in and by. Don't get me wrong, have as much fun practicing law as Paul does. One also has to put their head down and they have to work long hours. For every legal victory, TV soundbite, op-ed you read, you can be sure that Paul has spent countless hours preparing his case. In our chambers of 15 lawyers, it is Paul who is often there alone working in the wee hours of the night when he's engaged in a case. In Hardhat, for example, in seeking to discover the case his client had to make, Paul wrote a letter to the government lawyers that contained exactly 231 questions he had about their case. And their responses, I understand it, was not quite so thorough or energetic. As some of you may know, the past 2 years have been rife with anointments for Paul. He received the Sydney Linden Award for his contributions to legal aid, and the Law Society of Upper Canada recently recognized him for contributions to human rights, equality, and social justice. He responds to each honor, as he did to this one, with complete and I believe genuine shock. Don't get me wrong, he's absolutely thrilled to be honored here today. After all, he's going to get to use this microphone shortly. But he does find it hard to believe that you're going to honor him. Night falls, and the government lawyers tuck themselves in bed. Paul Copeland is up, and he's working. Last week, the government tabled new national security legislation, and given the rumblings emanating from Paul's office ever since, I would not be surprised if we've only seen Chapter 1 of yet another epic battle. I'd like you to join me and raise your glasses. My toast to our friend Paul to the next chapter.
I want to thank Clay and I want to thank Tammy. In some ways you've captured important aspects of the work I've done, and in some of the ways I don't even know who you're talking about, I don't even recognize it. It is for me an honor to receive this award from the Criminal Lawyers Association, but I must say it's rather surreal to be placed among the pantheon of previous recipients of the G. Arthur Martin Criminal Justice Award. Frank just read them out to you, and it is an amazing group of lawyers and judges. Many people who certainly when I started practicing and as I was first practicing, I just sort of looked at them in total awe. I'm not going to bore you with stories about my interactions with G. Arthur Martin near the beginning of my legal career. Clay told you one. Mr. Martin was a brilliant criminal lawyer. He was a treasurer of the Law Society and was then the best criminal law mind on the Ontario Court of Appeal. When I contrast his career with mine, I rather expect that Mr. Martin is turning over in his grave today. One story to illustrate that comment. In the early 1970s, a law student approached me to see about articling with Copeland and Ruby. In confidence, he told me that in his articling interview with G. Arthur Martin, Mr. Martin had told him that it didn't matter to his career in law what firm he articled with in Toronto, so long as it wasn't Copeland and Ruby. That student was Dave McCombs, now Mr. Justice McCombs. I want to thank the CLA for this award. In particular, I want to thank the selection committee for this award. I noticed that Frank promoted Associate Chief Justice Dennis O'Connor to Chief Justice for his work on the committee. It's too bad it hadn't happened in real life. My sons Daniel and Jeremy, who are here, and my daughter Leah, who could not be here, deserve my thanks for the many years they put up with me and with my involvement in my various causes. My partner Patty Walker has helped and supported me in my work, and more importantly, she has persuaded me to leave Canada for extended travel in many far-off reaches of the world. With Patty in 1988, I went to Burma. 19 years later, I'm still doing what I can to support Aung San Suu Kyi and the people of Burma in the struggle for freedom and democracy. Clay and Tammy have touched on some aspects of my work as a lawyer, some of them I'm going to briefly mention. Whether it affected the granting of this award or not, I'm very proud of having worked to help the anti-war movement and the Vietnam-era war resistors, helping refugees who fled Chile after the CIA orchestrated the overthrow of Salvador Allende, representing inmates in their organizing attempts in the federal penitentiary system, working with the Criminal Lawyers Association and with the Law Union over many, many years.